Welcome everybody to the town hall. It's great to see everybody here. Um, I'm going to start by recounting some things I think that, looking back, we've achieved, and I think it's always good to be able to do that because a lot of hard work goes into this, both from the running the grid perspective, but also from the residents' perspective in terms of building up content and creating the whole point of OpenSim and Second Life and similar kinds of worlds is that the residents create the content for it. And I think in a great many ways you have all done an amazing job at doing that. So getting the things that you've made in the past in, and also creating some new things. Um, Looking back, I think I can probably safely say that we have created in SG the most stable version of Halcyon that runs anywhere. It's I think the operational side of the business, the actual servers that run the grid, the backups that happen, the management of that stuff is handled, I think, quite well. And I can say that for the most part, the grid's not ever gone down. I've done some maintenance, of course, that has required taking servers down for maintenance and things like that, but we haven't just crashed or had issues like that where that has been a problem in the past. I think a lot of that has to do with having run Utopia Sky for so many years and knowing how to do it now. You've kind of learned what not to do and what to do well. So we've tried to apply that to Skye-Grid. That's a good thing because I think we can carry that forward to whatever endeavor we do. There's some, you can take away some sense of security that the grid itself is going to be run in a professional way that is stable. So that's something. On the other side of the coin, I think we're still struggling with a lot of the same kinds of issues that come along with Halcyon. The 26 item bug, there are appearance issues, estate stuff not working, a number of other things that are just broken in the code base relative to the current state of the viewer. And that's been a focus for me for quite a while, since we started this project last October, November, and so about 6 months now. And the reason for that is because there is a feature set I have in my head that I think we need to get to for us to be able to really feel like this is home and that we can do the things we need to do. A lot of that feature set is in part what we were used to in InWorlds, right? All of us had the experience of the community and things that were there in InWorlds, and this is in a large part created for that reason. Trying to create a safe landing spot and a home for people. Because we don't do this. I can guarantee you, no grid owner is doing this because of the huge amounts of money they can rake in. That's just not the way this space kind of works. But there's a feature set that, like I said, I'm thinking about that we need to get to, and I don't think we're there with Halcyon. And I'm saying Halcyon in particular because I'm trying to comment on the foundations that we're building on. Really, Halcyon's been stagnant for about 6 years since David stepped away from InWorlds and stopped doing active development on it. And that's the reason why we named the work we're doing Tranquility going forward, because I was trying to capture the spirit of what he built and how he built it, which is also equally important. Trank kind of did something that I think is key. In software development, it's very often the case that developers' egos get connected to what they've built. And so you defend that at all costs, because anybody saying anything negative about what you made is an attack on you personally. There's a way to program that's kind of egoless, where you really separate your own ego from the code that you're working on, and he kind of did that. There are things that were created that were really very much something to be proud of. Phlox and PhysX is a perfect example. He also created a team that was able to help work with him to make this stuff real. And honestly, when we talked about naming what we were doing Tranquility, that's the kind of ethic and the kind of feeling I was trying to capture with it. So we're building Tranquility. Halcyon's what we're running, but we're going to build Tranquility, whatever that happens to feel like. And I have some thoughts about that today. So I could easily make the list of broken features, and you've heard me address all this stuff in the past. Like I said, stability is good. The grid doesn't crash. Data is safe. The grid is closed, so we don't have to deal with some of the kinds of issues that come along with being a hypergrid connected grid. And I feel good about all that stuff. We got Skybucks out there, and that's something. It's been embraced by some people, I think, but not as broadly as I would have hoped. And I understand that. I still think there's a real demand, and one of the features that has to work is a cash outable currency. We had talked about Globits being that currency, and I think that we're still heading in that direction. But we don't have it now. So other features I think that do work, if you look at the current grid, are the key features I think that made InWorld special. The physics engine that's under the hood there was implemented in a way that's a little bit different than what you'd find in SL or OpenSim, but compatible. So, and I think that's both a combination of the work that David put in and also the work that Balpine did on vehicles to tune all that stuff. Those are things that we don't want to lose, no matter what. So, when we carry whatever we do, the Tranquility is going to have that feature, which is solid physics, probably based on PhysX. The other thing is the script engine. There are some things that we used to do in Golden Touch that I want to reflect on. There were cases where on that region there were thousands of scripts running, 4,000, 5,000 scripts that you're running at a time, and the region handled that fairly well. And this is on less powerful hardware than we can certainly get today. In OpenSim, Y-Engine comes closer to that, but I think that there was a lot of care and thought brought to bear when the script engine Phlox was created, and I want to carry that forward. That's a feature that we can't lose. So those are well, and I'll toot my own horn a little bit. There's some things that we did when we implemented mesh, mostly when I did the mesh work, with regard to how materials work, and also some of the mesh calculations for land impact and so on. I think those things are important too, and I'd like to see them captured and carried forward in whatever thing that we run. So there's a set of features that are critical, and the other ones that are critical that we don't have are the currency pieces, and really a marketplace. You can say that that maybe that's not. I think it's critical. I think some kind of a marketplace, just based on how people shop, is probably a really important feature to have. There is the appearance code is still a problem. We again, all of us are aware of all the list of features we don't have. The interesting part is if you look at Utopia Skye-Grid, which is an OpenSim based grid based on the NGC project that I'm managing and that a number of people are a part of, Balpine included. He's in the discussion. Those things are there in the environment that's running. USG runs, right, and including other features that we don't have and haven't never been really a part of our in-worlds feature set. Things like Animesh works. There's some changes for environmental settings and things like that are all new in the viewer, and none of those features, the new features that the viewer supports, are available through Halcyon because the code base is old and it really has never been updated or maintained. So I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, from a user's perspective, features, because to be honest, we lost a couple residents. Some people, I think they were excited when they first came on because they thought this was going to be such a great ride, and I think it still can be, but it didn't happen as fast as they wanted. In some cases, the current economic environment has been an issue. People are hurting because of the cost of things and having to carry the license fees, which I insist on paying for Windows because of the physics work. It adds a burden, right? There's extra cost that comes along with running this code. So the question is, what's the right way to go forward to get all these features? And that's the main thing. I'm sorry I'm being long-winded. I hope I'm being clear. That really what I've been trying to decide is what's the right way to go forward to do this. I've got this NGC project and active contributors, at least 6 other grids that I know of that run this code. It's a collaborative team effort. There's testing that happens. People share information and help each other out. These are grid owners that are sharing information amongst each other. I think there's kind of a desire there to eventually build a sense of a shared thing, that where you can have trusted grids that can interconnect, and it's a little bit more safe and secure from the internet or the hypergrid as a whole. Yeah, let's go ahead and take a question. Go ahead, Flamey.
All right, is it working? Can you hear me? Is there a way, this is my curiosity because Blocks is brilliant. Nobody uses Blocks but Halcyon. Is there a way to take some of the code from OpenSim and merge it in with Blocks to make something that's not OpenSim or Halcyon, but something that's better than both?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the answer is what it is Tranquility. That's...
Yeah, so and can we keep it closed? As in, we're closed to the public, but because in that way we could possibly get into Kitely and things like that without actually having to be open. I mean, it's
that's absolutely doable. In fact, let me transition because I'm being long-winded. I'm trying to provide background, and I think people get it. So what I am going to propose, I've been trying to make the current mechanism work, which is working on Halcyon code. And the truth is, it's simply just me that's doing the work, and I have to do everything. So I have this NGC project, and what I really would like to do is under the auspices of that project, I'd like to take the best things about Halcyon, about in-worlds. Let me say it that way. The best things about in-worlds that we got used to, which is Flux and PhysX and the mesh work and better making the simulator work more efficiently and things like that, all of those things into a code base that is maintained by the NGC, the Sasquatch code base, and that will become our Tranquility. So essentially, and what that means from our perspective is that I'll start working on in fact, I've already started working on the Flux pieces. I have the compiler working. I need to port the runtime. But basically, we'll have a mature OpenSim base that has access to the Kitely market. It has access to currency, all of the kinds of features that we said we wanted, and boxes we have to tick off. We'll have Animesh, yes, that's functional. All of the bake on mesh features and things like that all work. And we'll take and we'll port the flocks and physics and materials and things that are unique and really were solid about Halcyon into that environment. That becomes Tranquility. And I'll do it with the help of and under the guidance of that NGC project, where we can do a little bit of sharing. The grid itself will be closed, unlike others that are running that code base who are running it with Hypergrid. The grid will be closed, so it'll be like Inworlds was. It'll be a kind of walled garden kind of environment. In this particular case, because we take deliveries from Kitely, it's open in some scenarios. And in fact, I could actually open single regions, and probably will do that for the Creators Guild regions. There'll be a set of Creators Guild regions that are Hypergrid accessible, and those might be valuable to residents who want to sell to the Hypergrid. There's a few cases like Etheria, the Dinkies, and so on that are, and Tamara actually runs her AMB mall from there, where those people want to continue to sell to the Hypergrid, and they can do that through this environment, through a separate set of regions. But for the overall total picture, what I'm proposing is the grid is closed, like Skye-Grid currently is, and secure for that reason. But we get the features that we really want, and the grid will work the way we expect it to work. That's the main idea. So, like I said, NGC doing maintenance, I actually get a whole set of tools that I have to build manually for Skye-Grid related to the website and so on that I can leverage, so I don't have to do that work. I can focus on the porting work and really getting the functionality that we need to round out the picture and finish Tranquility into this code. So it makes better use of my time. We take advantage of a team of people that are all collaborative and working together, and all of us get a better grid. And by the way, we also all get it at a lower cost, which is significant. I had started to talk about the fact that all of us have been affected, I think, by the inflation that's going on and things like that. Some people are squeezed and having to carry the cost of the Windows environment. If we didn't have to do that, that would be significant. So in the USG environment, we can offer regions for much lower cost. I can sell VAR regions. So if people who are currently buying 2x2s and paying the cost of a 2x2 want the extra space, they can just take a VAR at a significantly reduced cost from the current price that they're paying. So I think there's a win across the board for everybody here. And let's switch gears and take some questions, because I do see some hands up. And then I'm going to continue a little bit more about how I think this would work. I think the end result of this is going to be a paper I'm going to work on. I was talking to Tanya about this in advance, and she suggested kind of a document that laid out the set of features that are critical and a roadmap for how to get there. And I'm going to put all that down in writing so you can all have it and see it, and we can check how we're doing against it. But let me go ahead and take some questions. Balpine, go ahead.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
This is really good to hear. Yeah, a bunch of us have been talking about this for some time. You know, the point of it is that there are a lot of really nice features that were in Inworlds, and you know, when we talk about can we move this here, that there, there's a whole bunch of technical reasons why you can or cannot. And so, without getting into the details, what would happen with Flocks, for example, is it would take that code base and port it over so that it runs on the NGC code base. Mm-hmm. That's one way to do it. and probably the best way to do it. The other thing is that the NGC code base is deriving from actually the better parts of the OpenSim code base. I mean, it's hard to say that because there's so many bugs in OpenSim, but it is a lot better in many ways. So there's that part, and it's also been tested. I mean, I run my grid on NGC, as do about 5 other grids, and so far it's running incredibly stable. As Mike was saying, I haven't. The only time I take the grid down is because there's some critical updates that have to apply, to deal with vulnerabilities that have been found out in the wild. It's never been a crash. Mm-hmm. So there's that part of it. And I really, I mean, if you remember me in InWorlds, I was Mr. Vehicles, seriously into that, and that's why Trank hired me to do the vehicle system, and then eventually I did a bunch of stuff with avatars and other physics things. But the point of it is that I want to be able to move. Actually, there's no moving, by the way, of physics, because PhysX in the current Halcyon is like 2 point something, which is a really, really old version, and it's also locked into running with Windows only. So what I want to do is to develop PhysX 5, which is capable of running on Windows, on Linux, even on Android, which is pretty amazing. And so that would be the code base. That would become the new PhysX. Then I could grab the vehicle system that I put together and move that into NGC. So you'd have the compatible behaviors and compatible scripts, for that matter, would work. So that's part of it. As far as a closed grid, just to point out, the NGC code base is pretty good at maintaining closure. You can do that presently by regions, by sets of regions. And so once those things are set, and you can define the level of closeness, but at the maximum level of closeness, no hypergridder can get in, no hypergrid transfers can go in or out. And that is the same as what Halcyon is today in that regard. But yet, you can get Kitely stuff coming in. So that's a really big plus. Just wanted to add that little bit to it.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, all very, very relevant. The other thing, too, with the porting that Balpine was talking about is, like I said, the PhysX piece, if we do PhysX 5, it runs in the Linux platform where we don't have to carry the cost of the Windows licenses, which is, it's an extra burden to when we're running really fairly cost neutral. In other words, we're really just recovering costs here for the most part. That's an important consideration. So, Judy, I think you have the floor. Yeah, that's a great, actually good way to summarize it. That's exactly the vision, is take the best things about, and I'm actually going to change it a little bit, take the best things about InWorlds. Halcyon is really post-Trank's leaving, and it, like I said, it's been dead. It's essentially not been maintained for about 6 years. So take the best things about InWorlds, plus the best things about OpenSim, and that framework, and combine those. Do it in a team environment where people can help each other and support each other, and we're going to deliver tranquility out of that, which is that combination. So yes, absolutely, that's the goal. Well, it's absolutely going to be years faster because, to be perfectly honest, the only person that is doing the work, if we do it in Halcyon, is me. And if we do this way, we have other help. But even if it's only testing help on the OpenSim bits, it's still help. So yes, that's actually, Judy's question is a good leading question to the other issue that I want to talk about. And What I'd like to do next is talk about a roadmap for how some of this could happen. But there's a few more questions. So yeah, Judy, keep me honest. I'll make sure I address your question. But yes, that's what I want to get into next. So Lex, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey guys. I'd rather have the ceiling, but I'll take the floor. But I like the idea. I came into InWorlds, I think in 2014, after it had been going for a few years. So the population was pretty high at that point. So I didn't go through a lot of the ramping up process that a lot of you did when things were buggy and there weren't very many people there. I guess what I'm getting at is with this new code base, I assume 5 or 6 other grids will be running it at the same time, like Discovery Grid with Ballpeen and a few others. And I'd heard bandied about kind of a trusted grid concept where even though we're closed, would it be possible to be open, like create almost a little mini open sim with trusted grids where we can hop between those 6 grids or however many there are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good questions. So let me, I think if you look at what NGC is, it's a team of people all working on a common code base, and each of the people that run grids in that environment kind of packages that stuff up and does what they need to do to get it to work. So if I were to make, for instance, the Flocks work available in that environment, some people may choose to run that, some people might not. I'm not going to put it out in just the general wide internet. It's something where, to me, you have to engage with that project to get access to that code. So it's going to be kind of sort of closed, but we'll have a kind of gatekeeping function for people to have access to it. But yeah, other grids could choose to pick that stuff up and run it as well. The trusted grid concept is an interesting one to me. That's the hypergrid as it sits right now is a little bit more than a little bit Wild West. And to me, the missing thing is a set of grid owners sitting down and agreeing on a set of principles under which they're going to run their grids. That includes things like we respect creators' IP, and we're not going to allow copybotting or IP to be shared around that isn't valid. Things like that. And there's things we can do to tighten that up. And that's kind of at the heart of the trusted grid concept. And yeah, if we may eventually get to a point where what we decide we want to do for USG or for our grid, when we go forward, is that we want to be able to open it up and travel to other grids that are running this code base who are operating from the same set of principles. And I think that all of those things are yet to be worked out. I actually think if we were able to work it out, we'd probably turn OpenSim on its head. There's a lot of people that would find that very interesting and difficult to deal with because OpenSim as a whole, in my opinion, is kind of a failed experiment with regard to how people run the grids. The code base is what we're going to use, and that part works. But a real trusted grid, hypergrid, where people could have slightly different focuses for the grids that they run, and people could travel between them because everybody trusts the other people, would be a powerful thing, in my opinion. So we may end up there. I think initially the first step is to get this code base in place and our grid working the way we want it to be. And we'll do that with some code sharing and hopefully community building so we can get to that trusted concept.
So my question is, what if other grids opened with the software that you were talking about? If other grids opened and they were other closed grids as such, that were running, so say like part of the Tranquility system and the NCG system, if they weren't open to the actual hypergrid, but we were all separate grids and we could then hyperlink between ourselves because we have a set of morals and trusts, we could have our own OpenSIM that's not OpenSIM, because of course it would be NGC or Tranquility. We could have our own OpenSIM that's not that grid, because that grid's awful.
Right. Yeah. The trusted grid concept is essentially that, where there's a group of other grids that are all operating off the same set of principles, so you can trust going there. And we'd have our own little overlay hypergrid over the top of the real one. But we wouldn't. So I wouldn't open up to just anything, but I might open up to a few people that I've built a relationship with.
Yeah. I think that is a good idea.
I look at it, the way it makes sense to me is that the trusted grids is kind of like the intranet.
Yeah.
You know, if you've ever had a kind of a corporate environment at all, you know, most companies have an intranet. So it's an open network between different parts of the organization and maybe even sister companies that are a part of that too. It's kind of like that.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
it's a trusted network, but it's closed and yet still open to the trusted intranet.
Yeah, so you could actually call it your own thing. Instead of it being OpenSIM, it could be, I don't know, whatever, Tranquility Open Grid or something, like just a different name, so that ours isn't affiliated with that, because that's what none of us want. I think that's why we're all here, is we don't want our content shared with random people that are going to take it and share it with everyone. And that, I think something like that would be amazing.
Yeah.
If there was like a trusted.
And that's absolutely there's no way I will do a grid that's open to the outside without being able to protect IP like that, because I just think it's important. And I know that the truth is the OpenSIM at large does not. So we really can't be a part of the OpenSIM at large and pull this off, in my opinion. Balpine, go ahead. I'm going to take one more comment, and then I want to get to the roadmap, because there's couple of other things I want to talk about.
Here we go. Sorry, my microphone was turned off. I was going to say, you've raised really good questions, and I'm really glad to hear that people are serious about wanting trusted grids. This is something I've talked about and with Mike and several other people. In fact, in the NGC project for it, pretty much, I think everyone pretty much agrees that the concept of anybody can take anything no matter what is a pretty harsh concept in terms of of just maintaining any kind of ability to do anything and have it protected and have some control over what you do and to whom you give it. I was going to say that the notion of trusted is a separate concept on top of the maintenance of getting features of Halcyon moved over, to Tranquility. So it's a sort of, one does not require. Well, you don't have the two different areas of things to worry about. But I'm going to get on the trusted grid one, and what really it amounts to is, in a way, is that there are many ways for people to go rip content. Even in a closed grid, people can rip content. It happens all the time. In fact, that's the biggest closed grid that there is also the most copy-botted grid on the planet. So so there's that. Being closed does help because it limits the number of ways people can take things. That's probably a good way to say it. What Hypergrid did and does is that it makes it trivial to take stuff, and that's where we have problems. And I'll give you an example. I have some regions. I have a lot of regions in which hypergriders can come in, but they can't take anything out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the oceans that I have in my grid, people can res things and that sort of stuff because we want people to go in and enjoy and res their airplanes and boats and whatever. But out of necessity, I turned off all hypergrid outbound accesses because what was happening is people were going into someplace else, doing a rip from one region, going into an ocean, resing there, and then, with their hypergrid avatar, then taking it directly, off of my grid, off to, Aquarium or wherever else they were going to. Mm-hmm. So the system, NGC today has capabilities of turning off hypergrid selectively and parts of hypergrid selectively, but it's missing a number of things. So part of Trusted Grid is developing a set of protocols that we can do to sort of turn off various spigots of access so that this doesn't happen anymore. And one of the ones is that, again, on a per person basis, a per region owner basis, you can say, I don't want any of this. I just want to be closed. And that works perfectly well too. So there's a nice degree of control over what people want. Because, for example, merchants don't necessarily want to turn off everything. They might want to have a region in which they want people to come in and go shopping and take whatever they want and pay for it, hopefully, of course. So there's that piece of it.
Yep. All right.
But what Mike was just saying is that we have now a group of people who are willing to do all of this stuff. And the stage, there are steps and stages along the way to get there. And people working together can get a project running way faster than one or two people alone. That's really the takeaway, I think, on this thing.
Yeah, that team is totally, it's been a huge benefit, I think. All of us have been helping each other out, and there's a lot of good learning that happens in sharing. So even if it's, not everybody is able to contribute code, but it's still the value of the team is the overall effort. So, all right, I'm going to get to the roadmap because we've been at this for a while, and I want to make sure I cover some of this stuff. So we have two grids right now, and we're essentially talking about. Judy had asked this question earlier about merging the two things together. So let me talk about what that means. I'm not, as I said, we're not running what we're doing to make a ton of money. So as long as I can cover my expenses, I'm happy with that. We'll continue to run Skye-Grid as a Halcyon grid. And again, I'm using that name on purpose. As what it currently is, for as long as it is practical and people need that. We also run USG, and it's available now. And in fact, actually, a very large number of the residents that are in Skye-Grid also have some representation on USG, even if it's just an account to log into. So many of you are already there. But I would encourage people to, well, a couple of things. Like I said, first of all, the prices for USG are going to be dramatically lower than what you're currently paying for regions on SG. And so you may choose to move over just for that reason alone. And the features and functions that are there are good enough. There's a couple people that come to mind that are kind of in a tougher spot because they need some things like some of the Flox functions and PhysX functions that are in Skye-Grid now that aren't yet available in Utopia Sky. And the best I can say there is that I will work with you. There's a lot of value to having those people in USG. One thing that comes to mind, for instance, is the Judy's vehicles. And I hope, Judy, I hope you don't mind me saying that you have a USG now. And one of the reasons for that is I'm actually encouraging her to test some of her work. As a baseline, I don't expect that it's going to work 100% the way you want it to, because PhysX is valuable for obvious reasons, and we don't have that yet. But you'll have a baseline, and we can measure progress as things get added or addressed. So I think there's benefit here to to people engaging in getting a presence in USG whenever is most appropriate for you to do that. And in the meantime, I will make sure that nobody loses data. And that includes making ORs to take content across. This is a case where I know the guy that runs the grid on both sides. So there's no trust issues or errors or problems to work out in that regard. And we'll do what we can. No one is going to lose their data like has happened in the past. So my goal would be to get people into what will become our tranquility environment in as graceful and as productive a way as possible. And that's going to be different for each person. So, but if you do come over to USG, what you'll end up with is an environment that is closed. It will have GlowBits as a currency if you want that. That includes the ability to cash out. It will have Skybucks, which I'm going to carry over. It'll have access to the Kitely market. And actually, I'll take this opportunity to introduce another new concept that came up just because it's timely. Wolfie was a member on USG for some time. I know all of you know Wolf. And a lot of things have gone on in his life, and he stepped away from the grid for a period of time. But we had a chat recently, and he's expressed some interest in setting up and running a marketplace that would be available from our grid, and he'll run that. That's something he can potentially make available to other grid owners in the future. And again, none of this is about all of us a ton of money, so Wolfie's free to do whatever he wants to do in that regard. But I want to be able to work with him to make that happen on our grid. I know many of you interacted with the NIW work that he did in the past, and many of you liked it. So I'm excited that that's potentially going to be available in our environment here. Wolf, I don't know if you want to say anything additional. We can certainly get details out in the future as they're available, or if you want to say something now. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that's something else to look forward to in the future, is that we'll have access to that. And I'm really excited about that personally. So like I said, there's a whole set of features that come along with the USG piece. No data gets lost. I'll work with everybody to get things transferred over. You'll get the same prims you had in SG with VARs, and at a much lower cost than what you're currently paying. So you have to kind of decide time-wise when the move makes sense with that in mind. And all of it, USG's been running for some time, so I think, again, the same stability and the stuff comes along with the picture. I'm going to produce a document that I'm going to share with the group that kind of outlines everything I've talked about and a roadmap for getting some of it done. So you'll have a chance to sit down and read through it. And that may generate questions, and if it does, that we have Discord for that, and we can potentially address a lot of those kinds of things there, because I think all of us will benefit from the information. But I think that's mostly what I wanted to talk about. There's oh yes, one other thing. The other thing that I'm committed to doing, and I'm going to start this soon, is we're going to build out the same waterway infrastructure that we have, open regions that we have in SG on this new environment. I'm going to do that with VAR regions instead of standard regions, which gives us a little bit more space to move around when we're flying, things like that. So that'll be good. The other thing I'm going to do, if I can work out the technical logistics, is drop the water height to 100 meters. Balping did that recently for Discovery Grid, and I think I think his residents generally were very positive about it. So I'd like to do the same thing, because that makes things like submarines and other kinds of things than the 20-meter limit that you have right now. There's a little bit of technical finagling that has to happen to make this work, but I'd like to kind of do this all at the same time. So we're going to build the same structure that we have in Skye-Grid now, the big S with the public regions and sandboxes and stuff. The waterways that are kind of fanning out and connecting people's individual private regions to, and you'll all have those things to sail around. With the roadmap, we'll publish the price list and the rest of the details, so you'll have all that available. And as usual, we'll work with everybody to try and share information and address things and questions as they come up. There's been a whole ton of information shared. My head's spinning too. So that's why I want to put it all in writing, and then we'll go from there. But I think in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is I want to build tranquility and Utopia Skye-Grid with all of us, right? I want us to have our home and an environment that we like and that serves us well. And I think the best way to do that is this way forward. And that's why I'm trying to take this approach. Loki has the floor. Go ahead. Thank you, everybody, by the way, for coming out today and listening in. Yeah, good question. Loki, the ores. So nothing specific about ores, except that I can say that in Halcyon, and again, I'm using that name on purpose, Halcyon being the version that we inherited, the ores are pretty broken, as we've all found out. There's a lot of fun finagling you have to do to basically map items to the appropriate avatar and things like that. And a lot of that didn't work. Ores aren't perfect in OpenSim or in NGC, but they're better, way better. And I think I've got a much better chance of getting regions loaded successfully and set up successfully with the OpenSim code base than I do the Halcyon code base. So I will be able to resume loading ores to this when we move forward with the USG related pieces. The same caveats that I've said in the past, everybody's got to take responsibility for the content that's in those ores. You got to know that it's legitimate and represent that, because that's what you're asking me to do, is to take that stuff into the grid. So I want to make sure that we maintain the IP rights stuff that we've talked about and respect that. But all that being said, yes, the ores will definitely be loadable going forward, and everything it should be much easier in the environment that we're going forward with. Hopefully that addressed your question. Lex has the floor.
Hello again.
Hey.
It is a little confusing, I think, even for me, and I've been chatting with you guys about it for a little bit. The stuff you've been talking about today mostly refers to the roadmap for the Utopia Skye-Grid, correct? Not the Skye-Grid, not the SG, the Skye-Grid.
Well, that's an interesting point. We need to work out what the final name of the combined thing is going to be. But yeah, it's probably Utopia Skye-Grid. That's certainly what the target is now. So we're talking about adding functionality from InWorlds into Utopia Skye-Grid. And that becomes Tranquility.
So my question is, what's the roadmap long term for Skye-Grid, not USG?
Well, yeah. So great question, and I'll be as direct as I can be. As soon as the features of InWorlds are fully available in the new environment, I would want to shut Skye-Grid down, and Skye-Grid becomes essentially the new grid is our Skye-Grid. It's our home. So I think that's the general direction. So the question is, how long does Skye-Grid exist? And that's really going to be open to the needs of all the residents, right? It may shrink over time, because if people move over to Utopia Sky, and we're just going to have to see how that goes, I think. We'll certainly work with everybody in whatever way makes the most sense. The people that are going to be probably the most affected are by this happening are the people that are dependent on the Skye-Grid features that are going to be initially missing from Utopia Sky. So we're just going to have to see how what makes the most sense with regard going forward. So,
thank you.
Flamey has the floor. Flamey, it's good to see you too.
Oh, there we go. Oh, thank you. And I'm so sorry for speaking yet again, but this is just more of a personal thing. I want to say thank you for everything you guys have thrown at this. I know on the back end of it, it's been the biggest headache, and it was my fault. I kind of remember coming to you and saying, we need a home, and EG has been destroyed, and I feel responsible, as well as a very good friend of mine who also feels probably is responsible for some of that mess. We know we're not responsible, but you know what I mean. We felt awful, and if it wasn't for you and Callie, I don't know what we'd have done. So I am ever so grateful for all the work and all the stress that you guys, the sleepless nights that you put yourselves through to get where we are, at least today.
Well, thank you.
And for the future.
Yes, that's the part I'm excited about, and thank you. Honestly, this is something I've always wanted to do. Anyway, was provide. Many of us have fond memories of, right, the inroads and everything we did there, and I want to try and recapture some of that sense of community. Lots of people have wanted to try and do that. Not the only one, but at least with this group of people, I feel like we can make a start and try and do a pretty good job, and we'll all end up with a better home, a place that we can log into that feels good for us. So in that sense, it's been a pleasure to do it. All right, Fancy.
I also want to thank you for what you're doing. I think it's going to be a great thing in the long run, and I know you're putting an awful lot of hard work into it, and I'm sure everyone appreciates that. I certainly do. I just wanted to get this clarified in my mind, though, because I sort of feel like I've missed something somewhere. The path forward that you're talking about is going to be on the original grid, the Utopia Skye-Grid, not
Yes.
the new version, the Skye-Grid. And I don't need to understand the reasons. I think I have a layman's understanding of why you're doing this. I just want to make sure that you're sort of going back to the original in the long run rather than the new one.
Yep, great question. Well, go ahead.
And so Utopia Sky is going to become a closed grid?
Yes. Yeah, so
already is, Fancy, except for regions where people have specifically requested otherwise.
Yeah, so that's let me clarify a couple things. So in the same way that I don't want people on Skye-Grid to lose data or lose their homes, I have the same concerns about Utopia Sky, right? There are residents that are over there, and I don't want them to lose what they've built. So yes, the goal will be to take and evolve Utopia Skye-Grid into the new Tranquility Grid we've been talking about, essentially with the new code. And for the most part, as a whole, it will be a closed grid. But as Balpian indicated, there is ability in the code base, and we're actually going to improve this somewhat, to control access by region as to what can come in and come out, and whether hypergrid residents can go to that place. And Utopia Skye-Grid already is essentially closed. Almost all the regions are not open to the hypergrid, with the exception of regions where individual region owners have asked for that to be so. And like yours is an example of that, where you wanted to keep it open to the hypergrid, and we can continue to respect that. So, and the way that works, so people know, is if somebody that is a hypergrid resident essentially comes over to the grid, they literally cannot see the stuff that is not accessible to the hypergrid side. So if they'll go to a region, say they were to go to the Creators Guild regions that where Etherea's dinkies are and so on, which by the way comes along with this picture. They can go to that place, but they can't see or query or hop to another region that's closed once they get into the grid. They just literally can't see it. So we can selectively do what you just talked about, where if somebody is on the new grid, the combined grid, and wants their region to be open, we can do that on a region by region basis. And that doesn't change the fact that I still want to develop that trusted grid concept and everything else. But really, it's a choice for each individual region owner. If there's a reason they want their regions open to the hypergrid, that's something we can accommodate.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I understand better now.
Okay. All right. I don't think we have any other questions.
If you don't mind, I'd like to mention something that I think will help.
I don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind at all. I was just about to turn it over to you because I think I've been doing.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you thought that. So one of the things we did when we started Utopia Skye-Grid a number of years ago is we started it with a program called Beta for Life. And what that was we offered pricing for folks to come over, and any regions purchased within a time frame would always be that price. So if you bought one and then another one and a third one, it would stay that same price for life, regardless of when the program closed and the prices went back up. So we're going to go ahead and reopen that program, specifically with respect to people that are coming from Skye-Grid. And those that are there now, by the way, we have a couple of folks that Mike mentioned that are in both places. So if you're on USG now, whatever price you're paying now will drop to the Beta for Life price on your next invoice, and it will stay that way. So the reason for doing that is because we realize that a lot of this stuff, while it is all to a benefit for all of us, it can seem confusing, can seem like a lot of change all at once, but ultimately what we're trying to do is continue to provide that safe space at a price point that makes sense for our current, economical environment, and a home where we all feel safe and able to create again and bring about that kind of spirit, that community spirit that was once had. And I think everything that lends itself toward this, the trusted grids, NGC, tranquility, all of that goes toward it. So even if you don't have anything other than a foundational grasp on what's going on, I promise you that the people that are running this, that are working this toward that spirit. So that's one of the ways we want to kind of make sure that people are aware of that. With the pricing change, the Beta for Life program, moving data back and forth and making sure that it's secure, and envisioning that until the merge of the specific items that need to come over is done, that Skye-Grid will still exist, so that people can kind of be in both places. So we can go through that. There'll be more questions on that document, the roadmap that Mike is going to put together that may answer some more, and we'll have pricing put out shortly as well. And individually, we can talk to people too if you've got further questions or individual questions. But I want to make sure you guys know that some of the things we're doing aside from the technical side will also alleviate some of the financial things that we've been individually spoken to about, with certain people and situations, because everybody's going through a tough time. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry.
All right. You guys have mostly been listening to me talk for about an hour now. I'm going to stop because unless there are specific questions. So last call for questions if you have any. Just to summarize, I'm going to produce a document that that talks about what we're proposing and the roadmap for how we're going to get there. We'll also include the pricing for USG for people that if you want to move your region over, or if you want to keep both, that's fine too. Either way is fine. I've kind of done the work on the hardware behind the scenes in such a way that I can release servers if I need to, or I might, in some cases, if we're moving from one place to another, I'll just repurpose stuff. So as long as that bill's going to get paid when I'm done, I'm happy, and you guys can have I think the environment that works the best. But I'll put all this down in writing so you have a chance to read through it and digest it. And if there are any questions, of course, we'll get them answered. And in the meantime, I've already started. I'm going to keep porting flocks because that's my first step. So, and I'm looking forward to building tranquility with all of you because the content to me is just as important as the environment. So if there are no more questions, I will call this done.
Really, this is the time to ask those so that we can make sure that they're captured for the video so that folks that aren't here can refer back to it. And even you guys that are here, if 2 days from now you've slept and had a whole bunch of stuff happen, you have this video to refer back to. So if you don't think it's important, go ahead and ask it anyway, because it might be important to somebody else. And that's not to say that conversations won't continue to happen. It's just that this will be the most succinct way for people to get the information they need.
No. Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good clarifying question. No, there is Utopia Skye-Grid, which currently runs OpenSim NGC. The specific name is Sasquatch. Long story about why that's the way it is. But anyway, it's the curated version of OpenSim that we've been working on for a couple of years now. There is Skye-Grid, which is the Halcyon-based grid that, of course, everybody that came over from EG was interested in. And what we're going to do is we're going to add, over time, add features to the NGC code base that Utopia Skye runs to make it Tranquility, which is going to be the grid with the in-worlds features in an OpenSim core code base. And I know I'm talking technical. I'm trying not to. Essentially, what this means is that Utopia Skye-Grid will get the features that we're missing from InWorld. So things will merge in the direction of Utopia Skye-Grid becoming the single grid that's running. And hopefully that kind of clarifies your question.
All right. I got a couple questions regarding the to work on porting flocks to NGC, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing I was wondering about was, will this also include the flock-specific script functions that,
Yeah.
or at least the ones that aren't already in OpenSim?
Yeah, great question. Yes, it will. So there's two pieces that have to be ported for this to work. There's the compiler itself, and I have that largely already working. The runtime is the critical piece, and that's the piece that has all of the functions that are, the normal LL functions and things like that. It also includes the in-world specific functions, many of which were actually taken from OpenSim initially and ported over. I'll have to figure out how we handle naming. But I don't have a problem with aliased functions. Like there can be an OpenSim version and an inworlds version, and both of those can exist in the code base. And you just call the one that you're familiar with. But
Okay.
yes, my goal would be to keep all the inworlds functions active and available as well. So if you used those, they would still function.
All right.
It should be mentioned that if there is interest in either moving over or acquiring a separate region on USG, if you don't have one or whatever, we can still use the same support function to do that. Just use a ticket to do that. And you guys all have accounts on the support system, and we'll, one by one, we'll go through those. There is no pressure, by the way. Having said that, there is no pressure. All this is the conversation that needs to take place to start the ball rolling. Take the time that you need to make the decisions that you want, because ultimately this is for you. It's for all of us, but it's mostly for you, because we want to make sure that this community thrives and has the safe place that you've always wanted. And I think we can get there. But again, no pressure, just options. I'm muting now.
Yep. So Lola, that's a great question. Yeah, so I mentioned this, but I'm sure it got lost in all the other discussions. So yes, I'm going to essentially set up the same waterway mechanism. We'll do the same basic thing. There'll be a small connection fee to connect to a waterway, but the same structure, the central S that has the public regions will be in place, and then the little spokes that come out that people connect their regions to. The waterways will be VAR regions. You can actually connect. We had a discussion about this recently in the NGC group. Yeah, that you can connect regular regions and VAR regions to other VAR regions. There's just a set of rules you kind of have to follow with regard to how many active connections the region's maintaining. So yes, the same waterway mechanism and public regions are all going to be carried over into USG. So basically, that's one of the first things I'm going to move back over to the USG grid, and those will be in place. And then when people are doing that, they can connect to those locations. And I'm glad you like it about SG. Actually, I think the waterways have turned out to be a really nice feature that really was resident suggested initially. So we weren't originally going to do that with SG, and you guys all wanted it. So I'm glad that it's something that you've enjoyed, and I'm glad to carry it forward. The nice thing about it is there'll be VARs, like I said, at least a 2x2, so you have a little bit more elbow room when you're flying or boating, things like that.
I had a suggestion. So Lex, I'm going to move you to speak. So I don't see any other questions at the minute.
Yeah, thanks to Ballpeen, by the way, for the information about what can be connected to what. His experiences were super valuable. I want to see his icon working with Animesh, flapping, and all that stuff. Something to do in his spare time while that works. I think Lex wants to give the floor back. All right, I don't see.
All right, fine. I was giving Lex a hard time. Lex had suggested that perhaps it should be a T for tranquility instead of an S.
Well, yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, and I thought it was a really great idea, but I wanted to kind of let everybody else kind of mull it over and see what they thought.
Yeah, we could.
And there's no parrot, Judy. That's Mike's chair. We need some WD-40.
Sorry, yes. There you go, Bensky's tranquility. Yes, the T would be standing for tranquility, and what we're talking about is the central set of regions, the public. No, not so much the grid, but the public area in the center. that everything kind of spokes off of. If you go to Skye-Grid now, it's a big S, and this we're basically saying make it a T. I don't want to put this up to a vote because we recently had a similar voting experience with our
that's a whole different group of people. All right, let's do this.
Making community decisions is kind of awkward sometimes.
All right, if you are for the T, use that emoji on what I've just posted. If you're against the T, use the second emoji from my second post. All you have to do is click the add reaction and find the icon. I think I did that as easy as possible.
I'm with Wolfie and prefer coffee. Make a big coffee cup.
Yeah. All right, fine. I will make a cup. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. See, this is the fun part about running a poll like this, right? There's always some technical reason that.
Yeah, either way it works.
Anyway,
put an emoji on which, the blue this is for the T, the red this is for the S. Yep. So far we have votes for the T.
Yeah. We'll sort this out. It sounds like it's going to be a T, but
yeah,
we'll sort it out. Fancy has the floor.
Fancy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
In the SG meeting room thing, yours, Callie, is for the T. Is that where we're voting? Where are we voting?
Oh, I'm sorry. In SG welcome.
Oh, okay.
If you scroll up a bit, because there's been some chatter, there's two emojis that I put. One is a blue up arrow with the word this. Another one is a red up arrow with the word this. And what you're voting for is if you want the waterway in USG to be shaped like a T, you react by clicking an emoji on the blue arrow this. If you want the waterway to be the S, you add an emoji to the red arrow this. So
the important part of this and the gist of Lola's question was, are we going to have public waterways in a public area like we do in Skye-Grid?
I understand the question. I just don't understand the mechanism. I'll just type it in that thing.
That's fine. That's fine. Do you want a T or do you want an S?
So just to clarify Alexa's point, we will be Utopia Skye-Grid because that's the name of the business and the grid, running the Tranquility engine. But I have no problem with immortalizing Tranquility as the T at the center of the public area. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think we're still going to stay Utopia Skye-Grid just because that's the business name.
Loki's posted the question already.
Yeah. So yes, they're going to merge. It's too late. You can't take it back. It's already been exposed. We'll sort it out.
That word around, Lex.
Yeah. We'll sort it out and work out what the public area looks like. A tesseract. Yeah, there you go. We've actually got one of those already on the grid, and it causes all kinds of trouble with the physics engine. When it tries to calculate the mesh, it's non-manifold. Anyway. I've tried to be good and talk as non-technical as possible. I hope I was successful Not that people here couldn't understand technical conversation, but I really want to focus on features and what makes sense to all of us as far as the grid we want to live on. And I hope that this all makes sense. But like I said, I will write down the approach and a roadmap. I think at this point, we don't. I don't see any more questions. Nerd speak is sexy. That I got to be careful with that. Sometimes if I say things to Callie, she gets. Anyway. Yeah, it's time to call this done before I get in real trouble.
I always have to remind him, user speak, not geek speak, user speak.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for taking your time. I hope this was worthwhile from your perspective. I think the end result will be worthwhile. I'm excited about it personally. There's still a lot of work to do, not only on my part, but also on your part, because I want you to all create good content for this thing, and I want it to make sense. Yeah, billing will stay the same. And although if you want to move your region back to USG, just let us know, we can work that out, and then the bill would just shift and change amounts. But
Lola, specifically so that you get that direct answer captured on video. If you are interested in a region on USG and you don't have one, submit a ticket via the support system for a new region. Pricing will be the Beta for Life pricing if you're coming from SG. Now, you're already on USG, so your bill starting in June, if it isn't already Beta for Life pricing, will be dropped to the Beta for Life pricing. But I believe you already have the Beta for Life pricing. So you should be all set. I don't think you'll see a change in your bill. To be clear, SG region pricing is not changing. We can't change it because we still have the Windows licensing issues that we have to deal with for those servers. So there is no change in SG pricing. The change is for current USG customers that are coming from SG, and for SG residents coming over to USG.
all right, I want to thank everybody for your time, and I'll look forward to going forward. I'm like I said, I'll publish the document as the next step, and then we'll get started from there. Probably be setting up the public regions next week and some of the waterways, so you have a place to look at to decide where you want to connect to if you decide you want to bring a region over. And we'll do our best to keep questions answered and get information out as we can. With the document I'm going to write, we'll also publish the pricing information, so you'll have that also. And I think on that note, I will call this done. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for your time. Have a good rest of your day. I'll be around in Discord if you have questions, and I'll be on USG later.